Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mount Vernon. Thank you for joining us. For your safety and the safety of our participants, we ask that you remain behind the white rope at all times. Thank you. Our demonstration will begin momentarily.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our display this morning of 18th century military tactics. What you're going to see this morning is a generic example of how fighting occurred at the time of the American Revolution. Now, some of the things you may learn today may surprise you and even shock you. And you'll find out that people like Mel Gibson haven't necessarily told you the truth in all the movies they've made. I know, shocking business that. I would start by pointing out, everyone you see today on the field is a volunteer. Every man has come here at his own expense. He's bought his own musket, his bicorn, his boots, his coat, everything. So every guy you see out here today has probably spent something like $2,500 and traveled to this site to take part today to bring history to life. And then next weekend, they're going on to somewhere else. Not maybe at this scale of a display, but a similar sort of thing. So the units come from all over the eastern seaboard. So for example, the unit I belong to is a loyalist unit, or as some people would call them, Tories. The King's Royal Regiment of New York, which was raised in the province of New York. And at the end of the Revolution, the settlers were driven from their homes and forced to resettle in Canada. So the modern unit is Canadian. So this weekend we drove down here to Washington to meet all sorts of interesting people and shoot them. So you'll notice there's quite an age range amongst the men you'll see on parade today, which is true back then, that according to the regimental rules, and at least in my unit, there were some men as old as 60. So if you imagine, because at that time, like the 1780s, they have yet to invent, of course, the car, but they haven't invented the train. So if you're going from Canada down into, let's say, central New York State, you're walking. So a 60-year-old man carrying a musket is walking several hundred miles up and downhill. And in those days in Western New York, not much in the way of roads, trails at best. So you'll see today the Army has quite an age range of people, which is a fairly accurate reflection. Although the vast majority of the Army back then, just like today, tends to be young men, right, looking for a job. Now, the troops you see out on the field in front of you at the moment are rebel troops, or as you would call them, patriots. You're gonna have to translate as I talk Canadian, okay? So they're the guys helping George Washington. The troops you'll see in a moment approaching out of the orchard to your left are various British troops, and I'll point out them as they come. Now if you look way down to your right, as they marched on, the fifes and drums, notice how they have red coats? It's because they're wearing backwards colors. The fifes and drums are vital for communication. Notice how you can hear them even at this distance. And they're performing a very important function to help the men stay together. Now notice how slow the men are marching? It's because they want to stay together, as you see there, forming these large blocks. And this is dictated by the weapons they are carrying. The tactics you're going to see today are dictated by the weaponry. So, for example, nowadays, you would never stand in the open waving a flag, right? You're going to be shot for sure. And just like in World War II, the battles move really quickly thanks to the tank technology. In World War I, they have trenches because they don't have tank technology. Well, this time period,